The two big pillars that this channel loves to focus on, those being artificial intelligence and robotics, are often still very much isolated and apart from each other. We often speak on the ramifications and the immediate consequences of what happens when these two pillars are brought together. But often what we don't speak about, and what is honestly rather neglected on this channel, is a third pillar, the human pillar, and what happens when we begin integrating all three pillars together all at once, all at the same time. Not too long ago, you may recall that I had an episode where we spoke on a particular project that was designing an open source, freely distributed exosuit. And what I didn't really bring into the discussion at the time was the rather nuanced subject of integration. I actually did infer it and implied within an example speaking on the matter, but we didn't actually directly address that particular part of the innovation, the revolution, the change that was happening within that story. So now here we are. And I'm pretty sure at this point, anyone who's watched the news for more than, 30 seconds or so, is probably well aware of Neuralink and everything that Neuralink is bringing on board with it. It's doing a lot of good, medically speaking, for a lot of paraplegics, a lot of people who've lost their, amble nature, and in general, it's just looking like a net positive for all. And I think this has a lot to do with the inherent complexity of a system such as Neuralink. A lot of people don't actually consider about what are the actual ramifications past an innovation such as that. What does directly plugging into the computer allow us to really do? Yet again, if you've watched Hollywood, if you've dived into these kind of topics before, you're probably aware of that old Matrix trope of, I need to learn Kung Fu, download Kung Fu. And, if you think about it, that would be an amazing ability that I'm pretty sure just about all of us would appreciate to have. What I think people fail to comprehend or recognize is that, yet again, a marriage such as this, an integration of human biology with artificial intelligent thinking, with robotic, synthetic, mechanical moving, these things will bring online a whole new host of innovation and revolution unto themselves. I would argue and equivalate the classic Hollywood trope, yet again, forgive me for being so tropey, but I would remind you of that classic Iron Man suit. And how amazing would it be if something like that were to come online and be not freely available, but widely available to the wider consumer audience, let's say. And, much akin to like a sports bike, right? Not just any old idiot can just pick the thing up and go. You gotta get your license, you gotta train, you have to study, you have to learn how to best operate and function with said machine. Integration is never a simple task. It requires a lot of moving pieces within the subtle nuance of the interweaving between the two systems. Yet again, just like driving a car for the first time, nobody gets behind the seat of a McLaren or a Ferrari or a Bugatti and immediately does 300 kilometers an hour. Nobody in their right logical mind does, anyways. It takes time to work up to that skill level. You have to practice. You have to get good. You have to study and learn and understand the engine, the horsepower, the torque that are taking you to that extreme speed. And there's another problem too, one that I would be remiss to not mention here in this discussion today, and that is the inherent, intrinsic adversity that humanity has outwardly portrayed already towards robotics, towards artificial intelligence, towards synthetic silicon sentience, shall we say? And regardless of where you stand on that issue, hater or lover, the thing is there's going to be an entire extra subset of difficulty and complexity that are intimately injected into the equation. If I get an Iron Man suit, and if I become fully synthesized with the machines, will I too start being referred to as a clanker on the web, on the socials, on the internet? Will I have to deal with prejudice and segregation because of my synthetic integration? You might laugh at something like that. You might laugh at that notion entirely. But it's happening, folks, in real time. Robo-racism is becoming a thing, believe it or not. And, well, regardless of where you stand on the issue of racism, and whether or not silicon sentience can even fall into that category, I think it's fair to say that a cyberpunk future is inevitably coming. But whether or not we fully embrace it is an entire other matter unto itself. So let me posit the question to you. First, whimsically, then technically. Would you be willing to integrate with the Iron Man suit at the cost of dealing with some self-sustained robo-racism? And more seriously, have you considered integration? Have you considered how far you're willing to utilize AI? Are you willing to take that next step? Are you willing to take that next leap to gain an advantage, to be able to literally as well as metaphorically soar above your peers? Is that an interesting, intriguing, or fascinating thing that potentially you could dive into? I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions on the matter. I don't think this is going to be an issue that crops itself up necessarily overnight. Anyone who's really tracking the prevalent technologies knows that pretty much all of these things are still in their infancy, and they still have a lot of time to, shall we say, gestate before we're ready to start integrating. But I think we can all agree that inevitably it will come to that. And the question is when it does happen, not if, but when it does happen, where will you stand on it?